Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat. So ngayon, nasa pangalawang lecture na tayo. What we will be talking about right now is universal moral values. And I think it was 2 nights ago when I uploaded a lecture or an article for you to read. And last night, I also uploaded the slideshow presentations so that you can follow our discussion for this afternoon. Um, right now, I am in my veranda because syempre para naman iba-iba yung iba-iba yung maging background natin. So siguro naman by the end of this quarantine, kapag nag-online lecture tayo, siguro na libot nyo na yung buong bahay ko. Okay. Um, I hope that you are also another assignment that I would want you to always think about is the current situation that we are in right now. So even if we are still continuing a bit by bit, our lessons in ethics and morality, on values, on principles, I would always want you to think about these concepts, these topics, in light of what is happening right now. Okay? Um, okay, let's begin with the first slide. It is important to note what I have written, the quote that I have chosen in our first on the first slide, um, which was a quotation from uh, Pope John Paul II. I hope you know who Pope John Paul II is. And he said that there is a universal moral written on the human heart. Um, it's both so simple and complicated at the same time because um, all in all, it just says that how do we how do we define and how do we ground morality? And for Pope John Paul II, it's in our heart. And what does it mean? Every human person has a heart, which means that everyone is capable of understanding and having a certain level of morality, right? Um, but what is more important right now is we try to figure out, is there such a thing as a universal compass or a universal dictum in terms of morality. Um, the main core of this lecture this afternoon is what are these shortlisted universal moral values and how do we enact, how does our personal and collective consciousness of morality actually uh, operationalize? How are our personal and even cultural concepts of morality, how is it operationalized in terms of what is universally accepted or what is universally known in terms of moral standards or moral values? Um, on the second slide, frame of reference or guide for helping individuals grapple with their particular values, conflicts, and moral dilemmas. We have been talking about moral dilemmas and moral conflicts. Mayroon talaga mga pagkakataon na napakahirap ilugar ang sarili o ang ilugar ang konsepto natin ng moralidad depende sa kung ano ang nangyayari sa mga sa paligid natin. Hindi lamang dun sa kung ano ang nangyayari, ang kasalukuyan nangyayari. Pero kailangan din nating isipin ano ang konteksto ng mga nangyari sa atin kung bakit tayo nandoon sa lugar ng pinag-iisipan natin yun ngayon. Um, according to Huxley, there is a concept as perennial philosophy, the core of moral principles that exist in every time and place throughout history. This is where the concept of relativity of morality comes in. Depende sa oras, depende sa panahon, depende sa lugar, mayroong mga kaakibat na moralidad na nangyari na sa kasaysayan natin. Um, this relativity comes into play when we are talking about cultural differences. How is it that in some cultures or in some traditions, one act or yes, one act is considered acceptable while the other one is not. So there is that difference. And how do we reconcile such differences when we are talking about the universal moral values or the universal moral codes? Um, there is also the concept of accepting a global ethic. So, this is where you now homogenize the concept of morality. Ano ba ang common denominator dun sa dinami-dami ng mga moralidad na to, sa dinami-dami ng mga, sabihin na natin, ng mga batas, sa mga nakaugaliang konsepto ng moralidad? Ano itong mga common? What is common among all of these various iterations of morality? Um, this can also be considered as the code of agreed upon rules that might serve to improve worldwide communication and cooperation. Um, siguro this process of homogenizing these universal moral is to arrive at a common ground. To be able to arrive at a common ground so that there is proper communication and there is proper cooperation given the differences and given the various codes of conduct, different traditions, and different contexts that we are currently in. Next slide. Why is there, why is it significant? Why is it vital for us to actually look into a common ground? In the next slide, I have put there a list of the most common religions throughout history and throughout the world. Not arguing for an end to individual or cultural diversity, but for acceptance of some limited common ground. And what is the most agreed upon universal moral value? It's simple. It's actually the golden rule. And what is the golden rule? And us being a Catholic institution, a Catholic educational institution, we know what this golden rule actually is, and it is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Gawin mo sa kapwa mo kung ano ang gusto mong gawin nila sa'yo. It might seem very simplistic, it might seem not complicated at all, but if you take a look at what has been happening throughout world history, crisis, atrocities, kung nasusunod itong golden rule na to, kinailangan pa ba nating maranasan ang mga masasamang bahagi ng kasaysayan natin ngayon? So the next part of the discussion goes into what are the cases against and for this move towards universalizing moral values. We first consider what are the points to consider and what are the cases against universal values. 20th century Western anthropologists have taken an anti-universalist position. Why? Because there has been the promotion of certain values as universal. They see it as also promoting the dominant culture. So we have talked about in our classes the concept of power relations, right? And we see that the dominant culture always has this position to impose, right? And for some of these Western anthropologists, to establish a universal moral value means that we are actually giving in to this culture of dominance. Ang makakapagdikta kung ano ang universal moral values ay kung sino ang dominante in terms of the culture of morals, right? According to Flowers and Richardson in 1996, this is a prime example of oppressive cultural imperialism, di ba? Magkakaroon na naman ng kapangyarihan ang imperyo na magdikta kung ano ang nararapat o karapat-dapat in terms of when we are talking about morality. For instance, slavery. slavery was once accepted as natural or even divinely ordained because the dominant culture accepted it as such. Yung mga alipin, pang-aalipin, mayroong panahon na tanggap ang pang-aalipin dahil dinikta um, ng mga nasa kapangyarihan na oo, natural ito, normal ito, bahagi ito ng lipunan, bahagi ito ng kung paano tayo um, gumagalaw at kung paano nito mapapagalaw ang isang lipunan. Up until a certain point wherein there were people who said, no, slavery should not be um, um, or the institutionalization of slavery should be stopped, right? Universal values could only become universal if it has become so abstract or general that it becomes meaningless. Remember that as much as possible, we want to be talking about uh, concrete things because it is only when we concretize or solidify things it could be more accessible, it could be more understandable by a lot of people. But if universal values continue to be abstracted, uh, it becomes it becomes too unattainable, it becomes too elusive to the point that it becomes meaningless, that it becomes just another word, that it becomes just another concept that nobody or not a lot of people can access, that not a lot of people can quantify or even qualify, and not a lot of people can easily unpack. Um, for instance, the concept of existentialism of Nietzsche, values were relative and objective. Subjective. Um, it is also the time when existentialists started going into the self to the point that they would what are the conditions of existentialism, or what are some of the tenets of existentialism, that the highest form of being is the self. Ibig sabihin, bumabalik sa sarili. Which means that the importance of the individual becomes the uh, prime objective or the prime purpose. So it becomes subjective, it becomes relative. For the case, next slide, for the case for universal values, why is there a need for universal values? According to Tillich in 1991, humanity might be doomed if we could not find a unity of purpose. So, pumapasok na dito yung pagkakaisa. Given all of these tenets of what should be morally acceptable, dapat nakikita na natin dito kung ano yung common ground. Ano ba yung pagkakapare-pareho ng mga ito? We are left with no way to condemn evil if they are part of the habitual practice and cultural traditions of a group. For instance, one culture accepts mutilation, or one culture accepts rape as part of their cultural tradition. Paano natin mahihinto ito? How do we argue against it being immoral or not part of a certain strand of moral values if they can easily say that it's part of our culture, it's part of our tradition? Rejections of extremes of absolutism and cultural relativism, and to appreciate that there are universals that manifest minor variations across cultures. Dito nalilitaw yung kahit na napakaraming anyo ng moral values, makakakita tayo ng mga pagkakapare-pareho. Acceptance of and respect for diversity and relativism can coexist within a framework of limited universalism. We are not talking about, or we are not gearing towards this strict code of what should be the universal moral values, but we are actually looking into that perfect combination of looking at um, uh, the number of variations, okay, of diversity, of relativism, and how we can operationalize that into the framework of limited universalism. Okay? If we take a look at some of the previous lists of universal values, we have included here Mohandas Gandhi. He included self-suffering, non-violence, and of course the search for truth. For William James, we have love is the singular foundation principle of all ethics and morality. Ito na yung, kung titingnan natin itong dalawa, they are so direct, they are so seemingly simple. But if we delve into the discussion and arguments of these concepts and we unpack them, we realize na ang daming problema kapag pinag-usapan ito. For instance, self-suffering, non-violence. There are so many things that you can argue for or argue against those concepts, right? Um, According to the General Assembly of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it affirmed dignity, okay, equality, and freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from tyranny, freedom from torture, freedom from fear of all people, regardless of race, regardless of status. If you are a person, if you are a human being, then you have the right for all these things. And then there's the Universal Declaration of a Global Ethic. Importance of the Golden Rule. Dito na pumapasok yung Golden Rule, the concern for other life forms as well as the environment. And this is now more compelling than ever. If we take a look at the issues on sustainability, if we are looking at climate change, if we are considering na hindi lang tayo mga tao ang kailangan nakikinabang sa mga ganitong moral threads. Kailangan nakikilabang din ang kalikasan. Okay? We should not be selfish in terms of considering what should be beneficial. If we are targeting benefit, it should benefit everyone, or at least for the common good. So, what are the short list of these universal moral values? First one is commitment to something greater than oneself. Ang pagtatalakay o ang pag-iisip sa mas nakakarami bukod sa sarili. And this is not being self-centered, not being selfish. To recognize the existence of and be committed to a supreme being. It is in ethics and philosophy, even in some religion, right? Religion subjects. Hindi tayo, we are not prescribing one major religion. What is important for me, for example, I don't actually care if you have a very specific religion that you adhere to. If you respect another person, for me that is the most common and most basic, okay? That is foundational in all forms of religion. That's why, of course, in black and white, if you ask me, in black and white, what is your religion? Of course, I will answer Roman Catholic. But in a more simplistic terms, for me, it's respect. I put very high premium on respect, to be able to respect others, to be able to respect differences. Okay? Um, to seek the truth or the multiplicities of truths, and to seek justice, right? There are a lot of people who cannot seek justice, who are disenfranchised, who are disempowered to seek for this justice. If you are empowered to seek for justice, you seek justice for them, in behalf of them. But not in a messianic kind of way. Always remember that. Next, self-respect, but with humility, self-discipline, and acceptance of personal responsibility. What is important here is accountability, right? if you are responsible for yourself, if you can prove that you are responsible for yourself, then you can also prove that you are responsible for your peers, responsible for others. To respect and care for oneself, to not exalt oneself or overindulge, and this is, of course, it has something to do with pride, right? And of course, to act in accordance with one's conscience. What does your conscience tell you, or how does your conscience uh, operate? This is something that is a very personal um, introspection is needed. Paano ka pinapagalaw ng konsensya mo? Pwede mo bang sabihin na isa kang uri ng tao na walang konsensya? Because that is very problematic, right? um, Respect and care for others. This is where the golden rule comes in, to recognize the connectedness between all people. Na um, especially in times of crisis, for instance, you cannot just say na okay ako, okay ang kalagayan ko ngayon. That's why I can be selfish. And this is where I can say what is happening right now becomes very relevant. Um, we might have uh, we might have confronted this thing called check your privilege. Kasi 'di ba napakaraming tao ngayon na ang dali-dali para sa kanila ang sabihin, um, sumunod na lang kayo, dyan na lang kayo sa bahay. But in fact, when in fact, majority of our people, majority of Filipinos cannot or do not have that privilege, do not have that kind of privilege, such as just uh, staying put in their homes. Hindi mo nga matatanong kung may bahay pa sila, right? And of course, last but not the least, caring for other living things and the environment. This is when you become accountable and you respect not just yourself, not just you being a person, but everything that is connected with the natural system. Um, this kind of responsibility and accountability actually reveals or is revealed during these times of crisis. Ngayon mo makikita kung sino yung mga madamot. Ngayon mo makikita kung sino yung mga ang iniisip lang ay pansarili, right? Um, and um, simplistically speaking, looking at these four short lists of universal moral values, you can already define and you can already make sense of of the gravity of being able to realize your material condition, your own condition. And with that, I end this lecture with a segue into what you're supposed to do next. Na parang, given this short list of moral values, and given our culture as Filipinos, and the crisis that we are now facing, how do we operationalize these universal values? Is it really helpful to have a universal code of moral values, or does it just make things more complicated? So with that, I hope that all of you are fine. Sa susunod nating session siguro, we can talk about and process how you are feeling and how you are coping up with this crisis that we are in. I hope that you are knowledgeable and aware of what is currently happening. That is very important, because all of these things that we are talking about in this class will fall flat if you cannot actualize or if you cannot operationalize these in what is happening. Okay? It is always about relevance. Okay? So, thank you. Have a good evening. Kailangan ko na magluto. Okay? Thank you.